Greetings and a warm welcome from me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today, in the latest of my deep dive videos, I'm going to share with you a truly historic astrological event. This occurs on the 20th of January 2024, but it won't be repeated for 231 years. Not until Christmas Day, year 2255. It is the Pluto Cazimi in Capricorn. Pluto is about to leave Capricorn on the 21st of January, but it's in its penultimate phase because it will return to Capricorn on the 2nd of September within its retrograde. It's going to go through that next phase in the sign of Capricorn, which is just over 11 weeks. But in total for this year, Pluto's in Capricorn for 27% of the whole year. So a lot of the focus rightly going on Pluto moving into Aquarius. But on the 20th of January 2024 at 1:45 p.m. Universal Time, we have an exact conjunction between the Sun and Pluto on the anaretic point at 29 degrees and 59 minutes in the sign of Capricorn. So it's that rare because when it goes back into Capricorn for those 11 weeks from the 2nd of September, this particular event won't be repeated. So what does it mean? I really feel it is momentous, and I'm excited to tell you all about it. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me. It's lovely to have you with us. This is very much a community. Any comments you have, I interact with each one. If you're a returning visitor, I really appreciate your company, your likes, your comments, and of course your subscriptions. Any support and interaction with this channel is something I really do thank you for. Now, with year 2024 unfolding, if you've yet to watch your deep dive year 2024 individual zodiac forecast, please see the link beneath this video. Also, you can check out my Pluto and Aquarius deep dive video, which I have to say has got some really great feedback. Thank you for all your comments. And if you would like to understand how serious astrology can play its role in your life, then please check out my offer. You can get your year's forecast based on your transits, which interact with your natal chart. This is what you're given the moment you're born. Just give me 3 pieces of information of time, date and place, or just date and place, and I'll produce for you your special package. You'll get 30% off, but you'll also get your love, Zodiac, Chinese and Indian booklets for the year ahead completely free of charge. Please see the link below. So the last Pluto Cazimi in Capricorn for 231 years occurs on Saturday the 20th of January at 1:45 p.m. What is a Cazimi? As we're viewing it from planet Earth, the Sun is moving in front of Pluto. Pluto moves slower. The Sun is moving in this day across Pluto and into the sign of Aquarius. At that exact moment, the Sun is magnifying the energy of Pluto. This is known in a technical sense, being at 29 degrees and 59 minutes, as the anaretic point, or the degree of fate. This is the maximum point of tension when we're moving on from the energy of Capricorn to the energy of Aquarius, which occurs itself on the 21st of January when Pluto moves into that sign. And the reason why this is not going to happen again this year is, although Pluto does reverse back into the sign of Capricorn on the 2nd of September, and it's going to be retrograde for 162 days from the 2nd of May, by the 11th of October it comes out of that retrograde, but it will move back into the sign of Aquarius on the 19th of November. So we have another period of Pluto in Capricorn. So in total this year, Pluto will be in Capricorn 14.2 weeks, or for the mathematically minded of you, 27% of the year. So as much as Pluto going into Aquarius is grabbing all the headlines, we have to be mindful of the importance of this particular event, which is very, very critical, but also that it is just the penultimate phase. But the reason the Cazimi won't happen again is that because when Pluto is reversing back into the sign of Capricorn again, the sun is not in that part of the sky. So that's why this is such a noticeable event. So I think, in a way, particularly with the thrust of Mars and the quick wits of Mercury both being in Capricorn along with the sun and Pluto on this day, there's a lot of Capricorn energy around. So we need to really consider all the implications of that. So this last decan of Capricorn, the last 10 degrees, which the Cazimi is occurring in, is subruled by Mercury. So how we think about things, but particularly around the material world, because the sign of Capricorn is the sign of physical culmination. So it is about structures. It is about the things that we're trying to build. And with the patience and persistence of the ruler Saturn, sometimes we can have real success by patiently chiseling away, making our way up the incline of that mountain, as the goat does, the symbolism of Capricorn. But of course, what Pluto does do, as much as build things and transform things and reveals hidden truths, it is also very much about endings. And it can therefore mean the destruction of certain entities. And because the 10th house is very much to do with how we connect with the wider world, it can be to do with public figures, can be to do with big institutions, governmental departments, and so on. And we are seeing a huge amount of change going on in the world, and we are seeing a lot of those revelations. And some of them are to do with very notable figures who've been in the news for years, and they are linked to sex scandals and the obsessiveness of the news cycle to wheedle out information. And of course, we can all be fascinated about what's gone on, but people were involved in these situations, and it wasn't great for them at all. So for them, it was very much about how power and coercion was used. So those people, those powerful people, got what they want and controlled the whole agenda, and the other people were most certainly victims. But we're not just seeing that in terms of the sex scandals. There's been something that's been going on in Britain for years. It was to do with an accounting system, a digital accounting system that the post office used. And you know, it's been in full public view for years, but nothing was really done to compensate the people, and a lot of the people involved ended up being jailed. And yet it's because a TV program was done, the whole focus has been raised, but it should have been sorted out years ago. So now government, ministers, and the people in those corporations, or that particular corporation that manufactured the software, they're really under very powerful scrutiny. And that's the interesting way that Pluto can work. It can revisit things when those people think that they're all in the clear. And so really Capricorn has a very positive side, because it's very much about doing things the right way, in a solid way, with wisdom. And you know, there are the strong and the weak sides of all zodiac signs and all planets, but Capricorn definitely has its upside. So who will this impact the most? As I mentioned, it's exactly the same with Pluto moving into Aquarius. It's early born fixed signs and late born cardinal signs are going to feel this tension a lot. But there is also the potential for early born mutable and cardinal signs to benefit from this event. You can obviously gauge how this will impact on you based on your sun sign. So in the case of Leo, this is just at the end of the 6th house in whole sign astrology. Or equally, you could think about Virgo. This is at the end of the 5th house in whole sign astrology. But if you know your ascendant, it's best to work out exactly where Pluto is in which house in your chart. If you don't know your chart, please take advantage of my special offer, because that's going to give you so much more illumination to understand exactly where Pluto is, but also where Saturn is, Uranus, Jupiter. You get the whole picture by understanding that map of your personality. Please see below for more. The other way that we can gain an understanding of the importance and magnitude of this event is to take a snapshot of the chart of exactly when it occurs. The natal chart or event chart is on screen now. That shows an ascendant in the bubbly Gemini, all about communication. But it's so late at 28:47 that the next 15 degrees of that first house is actually in the sign of Cancer. Very much more emotional. But let's take a look at the midpoint between the Sun and the Moon, 29 degrees Pisces. Now that's in the 11th house of the collective. The Sun is our drive, our passion, our masculinity. The Moon is our receptiveness, our need for shelter, and a more emotional energy. The balance of the two, the yin-yang of this chart, Pisces, but very close to Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, or the co-ruler, but very much a drifting, dreamy and sometimes misleading energy. And both those positions are squaring up to the ascendant. So if we think in equal house astrology, they're right on the 10th house cusp, which means that what we're reading about and what we're being told, particularly by influential people, even governments, needs to be taken with a big pinch of salt. The potential for sleights of hand very strong. Also, we can see that Venus, the planet of relating, in the free-spirited sign of Sagittarius, but in the hard-working 6th house, is also in a square with the position of Neptune and the midpoint. So that's also creating the potential for words, Gemini, charm Venus, to not necessarily reflect the shimmering reality of what's going on. The interesting thing is that the Sun and Pluto are combined in the 8th house, which Pluto rules, a very scorpionic influence, very much to do with those deep changes that we understand Pluto represents, but it can be very much about long-term money and anything to do with investments, those financial instruments that seem to be out there, and those people who really understand them seem to do very well manipulating them. We don't necessarily get to know what's going on, so that could be an area that's going to come up for some kind of scrutiny. But interestingly, the Sun and Pluto do forge a very good link with the Moon, but the Moon's disguised in the 12th house, so again, we can't expect things to be very open. So this chart points towards a lot of opaque energies, not a lot of clarity. So the irony of this is that Saturn's in a very scrutinizing, authoritative part of the chart. It may be not necessarily at its best in Pisces, more emotional. It's asking us all to work on understanding our emotions better, but it's high in the chart and it's going to impose its authority. It's actually forging a terrific link with Jupiter, Mercury and Mars, and you can see that Mercury and Mars are in the 7th house. Mars in the 7th house is a feisty influence. Mars is happy in Capricorn, but next to Mercury, it's possible that there are going to be some observations made or some maneuvers made by people who are going to push back against all the dissembling and dishonesty and covering up that's been going on. So we are going to see a bit of a fight for good and bad on this particular event, I feel, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out over the next months. But the sign of Capricorn, also because Pluto's been there since 2008, this is a critical point in understanding what we've all got from that process. You know, whether it's been good or bad or mixed, it will have been very, very potent. And what I'm going to tell you now as I go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces is what those last 16 years have mainly meant for you. But what you can expect, just briefly, in the interlude between Pluto moving into Aquarius and back into Capricorn on the 2nd of September. Please stay with me for that. So Aries, over the last 16 years, there's probably been some dramatic changes around your working situation. You may have tried different jobs. You've probably been very sensitive to the structure within those businesses, especially if it's a very top-heavy structure where you're just expected to keep your head down and fit in with the edict that comes from above. That's probably become increasingly difficult for you to tolerate. And in fact, over the last 9 months or so, you've probably become much more conscious of what you may leave behind to move on to something that really interests you a lot more. And there can be some very exciting developments for you for the rest of this year, not least because you have a solar eclipse in your sign, but your relationship sector is brilliantly lit up. The North Node is giving you a lot of encouragement to be individual. But even if you try something different between now and the 2nd of September, it wouldn't really be a total surprise if in the latter part of the year you were adapting some of those past experiences and knowledges that you've gained over these years in some kind of different way, but not completely different. So there may be something that starts to show up for you that gives you some new opportunities, but you will still be, I feel, embracing a lot of the skills, knowledge and practices that you have gained over that time. So whilst you may feel pretty rebellious at this particular time, you may find a midpoint between wanting a complete change and actually using some of what you've worked through over the past is probably the more likely outcome. The one thing you've learned over the last 16 years, Taurus, is the importance of knowledge. And one of the greatest pieces of knowledge you've probably gained, that staying as we are in a very steady and stable way is laudable. It's one of your great gifts. But even if you choose to stay as you are, the world around you is going to be galloping forwards. And that then gives you less opportunity to influence your outcome if you just basically tuck in and say, well, look, that's fine if people want to use these devices or do this or learn these skills or travel there. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the thing is, there's a lot more to you than if you are like that, than you're giving yourself credit for. And I feel that as this high point is reached in the sign of Capricorn, the 9th house, something could be itching away within you to actually change something up a lot. Maybe you're one of those bulls who has embraced change in a big way and have got a lot of buzz from it. But some kind of escape is going to be on your agenda this year in some way, but it could mean you changing the way you work or changing the way you move around in the world. But I think that you're going to learn new things in 2024, and that extra knowledge on top of the great experiences you've been gaining since 2008 is going to be a real surprise to you. And I feel that your ambitions, although they can change, they could increase, but they're going to increase in a way which will require you to be flexible if you want to just let all that energy go around you and stay steady Eddie. Nothing wrong with that at all. But it could mean that your life does feel a little bit predictable. And if you want some extra excitement, it's probably best to dive in and really embrace the opportunity fulsomely. So Gemini, the fact that the ascendant for this event is in your sign, even if late on, is really interesting, because if you're a late born Gemini, so in the last 5 or 6 days of the sign of Gemini, you've really been feeling that Pluto energy very intensely over the last couple of years. But of course all Geminis will have experienced in the quincunx, the 150-degree angle, Pluto connecting to your sun at some point during that journey. And the 8th house is complex, and particularly since Uranus moved into your 12th house 5 years ago, that adds an extra layer of psychology and in some ways mystery to the situation. But the 8th house is an area that we can actually bring greatness into our lives, especially if we're someone who's perhaps had a tendency to be very individualistic or really favour our space and freedom. Because whilst those are lovely things to have, and it's to your great credit if you feel like that, there are other things that we get from deep connections to others where we're really invested, where we're really devoted, such as intimacy, but also perhaps even wealth and money. So your connections to others in a very intense way are really flagged up by this event. But equally, if there's something that you've given everything to and someone's still not getting your level of commitment, you may find with Pluto moving into Aquarius that you're going to want to kick the sand over, and you're going to try and engender a much more individualistic and freedom-loving lifestyle. It's going to be exciting for sure. So Cancer, it's an interesting dimension for you. So this event really can bring a lot of feelings up about what you've been through over the last 16 years, but particularly around your connections. There could be connections that really, really tested you to the point that they did destruct. So some relationships have not made the cut. But there could be others that are developing in your life that actually are giving you a lot of encouragement, because essentially what Pluto can be about in its more positive dimension is through the transformation and change, we can actually regain our trust to go that to a deeper level. So if there is someone you've been seeing and you really like them, or friends you've been making and the alliance is growing stronger, the move of Pluto into Aquarius is going to give you an encouragement to re-engage in a way which has been tested since 2008. It just, of course, depends exactly on your natal birth chart as well. But in terms of the overlay of being a Cancer or a Cancer ascendant or early Cancer ascendant, yes, well, Pluto and the Sun in the 7th house. So you're going to be thinking a lot about relationships, whether you're in one or not. Even if you're saying, I don't want a relationship, I'm fine with the relationship I've got with me. That's a brilliant, and it's a point of conviction, and that's a good place to be if that's what you really feel. But just be aware that Pluto is about power, and sometimes we can use power in order to mask how vulnerable we feel. I'm absolutely fine on my own. Why would I want anyone else? Why are you even asking me that question? But actually, in some ways, it's a very closed, cautious, defensive position. So just be conscious of that. The 7th house, of course, also can be where we encounter people who don't have our best interests at heart. So if you're having a conversation with someone around a contract or a job, a business offer, and you're not sure that they're being above board, keep your guard right up. You're going to find out soon enough exactly what is on offer and whether it's meaningful or not, but definitely right to keep your guard up. 7th house, sector of open enemies in traditional astrology. But of course, sometimes in life we do have to compete. Sometimes we enjoy competing if it's in sport, and we have to be combative. We have to set our boundaries so people respect us. Otherwise, people are just going to trample all over us without any consideration. So you've learned so much about that over the last 16 years. But if something is being discussed at the moment, yes, be watchful, and make sure that all those snippets of experience and knowledge you've built up are right at the forefront of the way you're interacting with the other side. So Leo, I'm really excited for you above all the other signs in a way, because you are the sign of sunshine, you are the sign of radiance, you are the sign of charisma. But Pluto going through the 6th house has really been asking you to put all that to one side, roll your sleeves up and help other people. You've always been a kindly person, and if you're someone who offers services or is very good around practical management, you've really shone over these last 16 years. But it's uber regular, and your sign is very much about passion. It's about really charming and beguiling people with the force of your being. you're going to have a real chance to do that. But there may be some loose ends that you're clearing up. And also around your health, if you have tended to be a little bit lax, like most of us are, about some part of what you're eating or the amount of exercise that you're getting, well, in a way, Pluto and the Sun are still saying to you, it's not too late to make some changes. And maybe Pluto moving into the 7th house will bring in someone that you can collaborate with. And when Pluto moves back into Capricorn on the 2nd of September, that maybe through a competitive sport could be something that's really good, and you can really nail something down in the autumn. But for now, I think it's time to think more about how you relate to people. And that's an area of life that, even if we don't want a personal relationship, we still relate to people. And that can bring a lot of warmth to you if you really steer your attention to that part of life. So Virgo, since 2008, there's been lots of opportunities to express with passion, your talent. Even your love life may have run hot at times, but because of your nature, you're already somebody with a real appreciation that it's not just about ideas, flair and talent, it's about how you actually go about structuring things, making things. And that part of your nature is a real gift. And it could be that if you're in a job, for example, which perhaps has lost its appeal a little bit, Pluto moving into Aquarius could see you wanting to reconfigure that part of your situation. But what you've learnt with Pluto in the 5th house is that you have to enjoy things. It's not just about going through the processes, which you've got such a gift for ordering. It is about enjoying it. It is about showcasing your talent. And it is about also the warmth that you can gain from sharing your enthusiasms about the things you really enjoy, whether it's gaming, whether it's fashion, whether it's music, whether it's dancing, whether it's the arts, whatever brings you to life. That's what Pluto has gifted to you over these last years. And now, as you move into the 6th house, I think you're going to want to, around your work, really make sure that those are facets of your work that you can bring into your regular routine. If not, I think the next few months could see you thinking very carefully about making some fundamental changes. So Libra, momentous event. It's been a long, hard road at times. And here we are with the Sun and Pluto on the precipice of moving into that glorious 5th house. Just be aware, you still have Saturn and Neptune in house 6, very much about duty and responsibility. It's not therefore a walk in the park. The conversations you have also around this time with your ruler in that right angle with the midpoint and Neptune aren't necessarily also going to be giving you as much clarity as you would like. What you have learned enormously is about your boundaries, what you will or won't accept. But you've also understood what can perhaps affect you more and what can go in, and how to manage that more so that the strains and behaviour of people influence you less. And that's what you can really celebrate at this time. Ready for this big moment on the 21st of January, when through to the 2nd of September, you really can start to dazzle with all your magnificence. Scorpio, the power of word, the power of thought, the power of your convictions. Are your ideas really matching what you really feel? That's what this event is asking you. Because if there is any ambiguity, if you're not living your life in your emotional truth, your co-ruler Pluto is going to ask some serious questions as it moves into Aquarius through to the 2nd of September initially. Now it could be that you're really at ease with how things are going, particularly in terms of your everyday communications, your connections with neighbours, with siblings, your interaction with people on social media. But it is really, really important, because what Pluto, your ruler, can reveal with the way you communicate is that even if you are thinking that you are communicating in a particular way that suits you, other people can read how you're communicating in a completely different way. So the subtext of your communications is really coming under scrutiny with this particular event. And then with Pluto moving into the 4th house, a lot of emotional stuff can be stirred up initially from now through to the 2nd of September. Sagittarius, that big push over the last 16 years is all about trying to find your identity, the foundations, your way of earning a living, really making sure that you can have something to base your existence on that really works for you. But of course, it is very earthy stuff, and you're a sign that loves drama, loves the big picture, loves some extravagance. And I feel that Pluto moving along with the Sun into the sign of Aquarius is going to bring some welcome relief. It's going to bring a lot of quicker energy. Things will speed up in all sorts of ways. But you have been learning a lot about what your minimum requirements are in terms of that base. And that's really the foundational point that you're going to launch forwards from. So the more you've worked at it, the more you really know who you are within it, the more that you're going to benefit as Pluto switches to Aquarius. Capricorn, if you're born towards the end of your sign or you have other personal planets in Capricorn, it probably hasn't been easy, particularly in the last few years when you had Saturn returning to your sign. Obviously, we had Saturn and Pluto at the start of COVID. Jupiter, always in your sign at the same time as then, brings some kind of economic downturn. That's happened again. So a lot's happened, but at the end of the day, your sign is about convention, and it is about fitting in with the orthodox. It is about conforming. But the 1st house, where the Sun is now alongside Pluto, is not. It's about you, the individual. So that's why you at times may have felt confused or conflicted over the last 16 years. As much as you've wanted to strut your stuff, there's another part of your instincts that maybe wants to stick with what you know. Uranus has come along and added an extra dimension of twist into the equation over the last 5 years. If you're a creative, if you're someone who has hobbies which are very self-expressive, if you're someone who works for yourself, you've probably got through Pluto moving through your sign a lot better than some. If you are someone who's used to being in a bigger organisation, at times it may have felt really quite challenging, because what you're wanting to do is, in a way, create your own organisation. If that's not really within you, that's not really your instinct, that's made you in a way more vulnerable to how the organisation or institution has changed around you. Hence, you've had lots of shifting energies, and that's not been that easy to deal with. But the great thing about Pluto moving into your 2nd house is the things that you have learned over these last 16 years, you can now start to concrete them down into a foundation which can grow on from here through to year 2043. So Aquarius, since 2008, you've probably learnt some massive lessons around people's honourability or lack of it, people's trustworthiness or lack of it, the way that people can play games and work behind your back around things, when you would favour people being upfront and saying, look, I have this issue, can we discuss it? Yes, of course you're going to present your side of it, but people like that you can do business with. But the people who can't really or don't have the courage, the emotional and spiritual courage to sit down and have that dialogue, those are the people that I think Aquarius folks can struggle with. And there may have been some big betrayals over this last 16 years, and some people who have made way out of your life that you would never have believed would. But that, unfortunately, is what Pluto can do. It can tease out those disloyalties, those links that aren't really as genuine as you need. So what's going to happen now is all the information that you've absorbed, all the experiences you've gained, some of it very painful, could see you a little bit wary about this new Aquarian dawn, and that would be absolutely right. I don't think it's going to be an absolute panacea, as I've said before. If you're really at the start of Aquarius, with whatever personal planet, it is going to be very powerful. Of course it will. And what happens with the retrogrades is that the hit is repeated. And like all astrological influences, when we first get them, they can knock us over. The next time we're stumbling up, but we're dazed. But the third time they occur, we're getting the hang of it. It was the same when Uranus first moved into Taurus in 2018 for 5 months. Mars was right at 0 degrees in Aquarius. So that was a very tense time for early born Aquarians, but particularly around home, family and emotional issues. So what I would say is that you've learned an awful lot and developed a lot of hidden powers. And actually, when people disappoint you now you're actually anticipating when they're going to do it. And actually, you're plotting ahead and making sure that you've got the next move in the chess game already in place, because you know how brutal life can be and how disloyal people can be, sadly. But you've also got that amazing ability to see the goodness in certain situations and people that other people just don't see at all. And that's the bit that's going to come into the sunshine in a big way. So your unique way of looking at life can start to come back to you, but until Pluto fully leaves Capricorn later this year, there is still going to be some tailwinds from some of the things that have occurred in those previous years, unfortunately. So it's a step forwards on the 21st, but it's one where you're still going to be just looking backwards a bit and thinking, yeah, I'm not going to forget that, and that's going to guide me with a little bit more caution future forwards. But with Pluto moving into your sign, you have to become your own team captain and really believe in it, because if you're wanting people to relate to you in the truthful, vulnerable way that has been created, you probably won't make as many connections. You have to kind of accept that that's part of the process. Dust yourself down. You can always reveal it at a later date to the people who are worthy of it, but don't be expecting people to tune into the story so much. I just don't think they will be so interested from my own experience. So it's like getting on the front foot and really showing people what makes you so absolutely unique and being proud of it too. So Pisces, the wonderful thing about Pluto moving through your 11th house is it's giving you lots of connections, lots of understanding of the things that really inspire you. It's going to be moving into your 12th house, which is essentially what your sign's about. If you are someone into personal development, into healing, into meditation, Pluto's just going to feed that and light it up in a really positive way. And if you're really allied to certain associations, or you follow a sports team, your enthusiasm for those associations or that sports team is definitely going to be very high on Saturday the 20th. But on the 21st, it's a new beginning. It's a new beginning that gives you a little bit of a taster pack through to when Pluto eventually emerges from Capricorn later in the autumn. But what it will do is see you become even more psychological in your view of life. But that actually can be something that's very, very empowering. So I would accept it into your life in a big way. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Please do like, comment, share or subscribe.